backgrounds and perspectives from yours. That includes our initial instructions. You ready for your opening statement?
You go on. Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, on April 20th, a young mother named Kristen Sigler threw a birthday party for her 3-year-old son, Stetson. Like many mothers, Kristen went all out for the party. She had a face painting station, a hot dog bar, entertainers, props and backdrops for photos, and even a bounce house outside of the party. Kristen has worked for several years at the Swan Boat Club in Berlin Township, Newport, state of Michigan, right on Lake Erie. She used the club's event space to hold the party. The party started at noon, and by a little before 3 p.m., the party guests had just finished singing happy birthday to the guest of honor. By all accounts, it was a very successful party, it was well attended, and the kids there were taking advantage of all the attractions. However, at the same time, less than 2 football fields away, at her home, the defendant was leaving, pulling out onto Branchaw Road. She was also headed to the boat club. Both of these events are memorialized on camera. The party was captured on the Swan Boat Club security cameras, and the defendant on a home camera mounted above her garage building across the street. Mariah Dodds, a longtime friend of Kristen's, and her 3 children, Jaden, Zayn, and Alana Phillips, had just sat down at a table to enjoy their lunch from the party's hot dog bar. As they were beginning their meal, the defendant backed out of her driveway, accelerated her car in an arc out of her driveway, crashing into a small tree and then into her neighbor's full-size pickup truck, forcing it through a wooden fence. The defendant then places her car in drive and speeds off toward the boat club, just 4 houses down. As Mariah grabs cake pops at the dessert station for her kids, the defendant barrels at full speed down Branchaw Road and makes a right turn into the club parking lot. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ken Lorraine. I'm an assistant prosecutor for the County of Monroe. Along with my fellow assistant prosecutors, Christopher Marriott and Alexis Hatch, we will prove to you over the course of the next several days that defendant's actions in this case make her guilty of the charges of second-degree murder for Zayn and Alana Phillips, OWI causing death for Zayn and Alana Phillips, and OWI causing serious impairment of a body function for Zayn and Alana's mom, Mariah, their brother, Jaden, and for Ed Smothers, Leah Stith, and Diane Medina. I don't particularly like long and winding opening statements. I like to give the jury what I would want if I were a juror. A roadmap, a table of contents to what the prosecution will present to you over the course of the trial. To simplify things for you folks, basically the way we're going to present this is you're going to hear from our witnesses in 4 groups. The first group will be guests and boat club members at the party. They'll talk about the party, they'll talk about the crash, and to some degree, they'll talk about what they saw of the defendant. Some of them will help us show you video of the crash and its aftermath. Some of them will simply tell you what they saw and what they remember, or what they don't remember, and they'll tell you what they went through. You will not hear from all of them. By most accounts, there were some 80 people in and out of the party through the course of the day, and several others that just wandered over from the boat club proper after the crash. The second group you will hear from is the first responders, the captain of the Frenchtown Fire Department and many members of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. They arrived on scene shortly after the crash. They will give you more information about the crash, its results, and the steps they took to investigate it. Again, you won't hear from all of them. Law enforcement officers from at least 4 agencies were on scene, as were multiple fire departments, ambulance companies, and 2 life flight helicopters. You will hear the stories from the witnesses we call and see some of the footage from their body-worn cameras. Through that medium, you will also hear from the defendant. Next, we're going to call a group of witnesses that are necessary under the rules of evidence for you to hear about what was in the defendant's blood when she crashed her car. As I spoke about a little bit in voir dire, the rules of evidence are sometimes strict and not always straightforward, but they are important to ensure a fair trial both for the defendant and for the victims. Finally, you'll hear from some of the surviving victims. Mariah, Edward, Leah, and Diane will tell you what they can remember from the crash, about their injuries, and somewhat about their road to recovery. Before I conclude, I want to speak just briefly about the jury instructions that the judge highlighted and give you a sense of what the people think you should be watching for over the course of the next few days. We can bring up the... You don't have to be able to entirely read this. You'll get it printed out at the end of the trial. But just roughly, as to the 5 counts 4 through 9, of OWI causing serious impairment of a body function, we have to prove that the defendant voluntarily operated her vehicle, that she did so in a parking lot or a place accessible to the general public, and that while she was operating it, she was either legally intoxicated, which is what we all hear about when we think of drunk driving, that she was a .08 or higher, or that she was under the influence of alcohol. In other words, I could think of a 90-pound, 25-year-old woman who I could give 1 glass of wine to. She could be at a .04, but just be drunk out of her mind. So it's not always just a .08. That's the legal limit. And we consider if you're over a .08, regardless of how you feel, you're legally intoxicated. But it is possible for you to find intoxication under a .08. Or we can prove that she was impaired by the consumption of alcohol and the consumption of a intoxicating substance called gabapentin. And that in doing this, in driving, after ingesting these substances, she caused a serious injury to one of those 5 victims. Similarly, the 2 counts of operating while intoxicated causing death, the deaths of Zayn and Alana Phillips. The beginning part of the jury instruction is the same. We have to prove the operation, its voluntariness, its location, and its intoxication. But in this, we also have to prove that due to the operation, she was the factual and proximate cause of the death of these 2 children. As to the people's first 2 counts, the counts at the top of the complaint, 2 counts of murder in the 2nd degree, the people will prove that the defendant's actions caused the death of Zayn and caused the death of Alana, and that she had one of 3 states of mind. That is to say, what was her legal intent? We must show that she intended to kill, or she intended to cause great bodily harm. In other words, she drove through the boat club wall intending to kill someone, or intending to seriously harm someone. Or the 3rd state of mind, that she knowingly created a very high risk of death or great bodily harm by her actions, knowing that death or great bodily harm was the likely result of what she did. Intent is what is in a person's mind when they commit an act. It's what they are thinking when they act. The jury instruction will tell you that you determine someone's intent from what they said, what they did, and how they did it. It will also tell you that you can use any other facts or circumstances in the case to determine a defendant's intent. These are some of the things to look out for over the course of the next few days. At the conclusion of the trial, I'm going to stand back up here again, and we're going to go over a lot of the evidence. And the people will contend that on behalf of the victims, and on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan, that you should find the defendant guilty of 2 counts of 2nd-degree murder, 2 counts of OWI causing death, and 5 counts of OWI causing serious impairment of a body function. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Lorraine. Would you like to make your own statement now or later?
Now, Your Honor.